Fats, let's you and I shoot a game of straight pool.
$100?
Well, you shoot big-time pool, Fats. I mean, that's what everybody says, you shoot big-time pool. Let's make it $200 a game.
The Hustler had a whole quality to it that was just a delight.
We were not aware of just how good that thing was.
Maybe it'd be better if we just leave each other alone.
It was just so brilliant and simple. I knew I wanted to be part of it.
I don't rattle, kid. But just for that, I'm gonna beat you flat.
This is what makes Robert Rossen's cinema so different from classical Hollywood cinema. Classical film deals with winners, by and large. This deals with losers.
Shark.
The script is good, the character is good, the situation's good. It was a delightful experience all the way around.
I guess we have to start at the beginning. The beginning was a novel. It was published in 1959 by Walter Tevis. It has none of the texture. It has none of the depth. It has none of the delicacy of Rossen's work.
The director, Robert Rossen, chose to shoot The Hustler in black and white. That was not because there was no color in those days. I'm not that old. But the director chose to shoot it in black and white. And you know, so many people you will ask about that film, they could swear it was in color.
Rossen was uncomfortable in color. There are only 4 films in his life that he did in color. So he feels comfortable in black and white. This is his style, social realism, and of course, the subject matter lent itself to black and white.
The beginning scene, which was called The Hustle, it gave the whole beginning energy that it would not have had.
Rossen, as a writer, always went for symmetry, and we have a beautiful symmetry in The Hustler. We have a pre-credit sequence, the prologue, which is a pool game. Was this so unique? It was and it wasn't. It wasn't unique because what Hollywood was doing was television. This is what television did. Was to hook you in. Also, the film runs 2 hours and 15 minutes, and, you know, it seems shorter if you have an opening sequence, you have the credits, you could take a break, and then you come back. It makes it play shorter. Another reason he did this is, of course, the symmetry. We have 5 pool games, and each one of those pool games show where the character of Eddie is. That's what Rossen liked to do. He liked to pull back in the films and use a metaphor to show exactly where the people were at this particular time. And here he uses the 5 pool games.
I remember talking to Barbara McLean, who was then the head of editing at Fox. And she was the one who said to me, Dee, hun, I remember, Dee, hun, you really don't need that scene in the beginning. So I said, well, I'll discuss it with Mr. Rossen, see how he feels about it. So Rossen thought it was ridiculous, but we said, let's try it, and that's how we did it. We tried it. And then I called her back and I said, it doesn't work.
Set him up again.
It turned the picture into a totally different film because all of those wonderful kind of twinkles in Newman's eye as the hustler didn't mean anything unless you knew he was a hustler.
That drew us into Newman. There is also another thing that's going on here, and that's quite remarkable. The credits are unusual in that the credits are about what is going to unfold in film to draw you in. And of course, at a very dramatic place, he freezes and puts the credit on. But the credits are not like in medias res, what is happening now. They're future time, and it works beautifully.
It was wonderful that it was not a set of a pool hall, it was a real one.
Morning, Henry.
You can do an inside of a New York office out in Burbank, but there's a quality, an essence about New York, and particularly in a pool hall. And those were real pool halls. We weren't shooting in sets.
It was a kind of a place you didn't even want to lean on the wall, you'd get your clothes all dirty, you know. And as soon as we left, all the characters came in that were going to hang out there all night.
Even at this time, they would do exteriors on location and come back to the studio and do interiors. Not so with The Hustler. Even interiors, they were built at 55th and 10th Avenue, Fox's studio in Manhattan. The setting is very personal for Rawson.
Any table? Any table.
You have two settings that form a dialectic in his work, a conflict in his work. Lower class, and that's where his protagonist comes from, the lower class, and they work themselves up through the talent that they have into the wealthy class, and you have that conflict.
I got company. You looking for action?
Maybe you want to play?
No, hell no. You, Eddie Felson.
Who's he?
What's your game? What do you shoot?
Name it, we shoot it.
Look, friend, I'm not trying to hustle. I don't ever hustle people that walk in a pool room with leather satchels. Don't try to hustle me.
The Hustler was my first film ever, and I have a lot of bizarre memories of it. It was a different atmosphere from usually in Hollywood.
It seems like it took forever to do. And there was a lot of tension among all of us.
The atmosphere on a set comes from whoever has the most power on the set. It reflects their personality. Now, on that set, Newman was young, but he was a starting out star. So he had a certain amount of power, and of course, the director, Robert Rawson, who I believe had won an Academy Award for All the King's Men, he had the power on the set. And both of them were very serious, very tense people. And so the atmosphere on the set became not frightened, but everybody very, very into what they were doing. I felt perfectly normal in it because I figured, well, it's just actors working on their parts, you know.
Go home. Take your boy and go home. Fats don't need your money. There's no way you can beat him. Nobody's beat him in 15 years. He's the best in the country.
Oh, you got that wrong, mister. I am.
I was working on a good film with a good director. Robert Rawson let us experiment with scenes and kind of feel our way through them. But he also had a really good eye, and if you were going in the wrong direction, he could really set you straight.
The thing that was lovely about him was he said, you know, I don't really know how to talk to actors. I don't know what to tell them, how to do something. But I know if it feels right to me.
Oh.
And in a way, that is a signal to the actor to be free, because suddenly you're definitely in charge of doing something a little different. And I thought that was so disarming.
He always called me kid. Kid? I was 34 or something when I did it at 33. I was hardly a kid, but I learned a lot of things from Rawson. I think it's a matter of communication. I think he finally got to the point where he trusted me totally, and I thought he was extremely talented, which he was.
Rawson was born in 1908, so he's 52 years old when he directs The Hustler. He was born in an impoverished section of New York's East Side of Jewish parentage. He was educated at NYU and then drifted into theater. Now, these theater groups were all agitprop theater, the use of the stage for social protest. Because Rawson had a way with controversial material, Fox let him produce and they let him co-write with Sidney Carroll. And hence comes out a very, very low-budget production, but a very personal work, a very uncompromised work.
Jackie Gleason was fun. We had him only a certain number of days, but it was fun, you know.
He was easy. He was on time, knew what he was doing. Jackie Gleason was just about as good as it gets.
Gleason was a star in television at this particular time. This character of Ralph Cramden, the bus driver on The Honeymooners, endeared him to so many people. And he was hot and over the top. He moved around a lot, smiled, a very warm character. Also inverted it. So what you get is a person that doesn't move. It's a wonderful contrast.
I think it was the first time I worked with Jackie Gleason, that film. I remember I had a nerve since it was my first film and he was already a star. But I remember stopping him one day and saying, Jackie, I know you're playing this part very seriously. This is not comedy for you. But I said, there's a strange thing that happens. You're wearing this overcoat with a flower in the lapel. And when you take off the overcoat, in your suit jacket, there's a flower right there. It's like you remove one flower and there it is again. and it's almost like a sight gag. I'm not sure. He says, and when I take off my shirt, I got another one on my chest. It was like, it didn't faze him at all.
6 in the corner.
I remember both Paul and Jackie Gleason were good pool players. But Rawson kept saying to me, don't forget, kid, it's not about pool, it's about character. And that's the kind of thing you learn from a really good director.
Jackie Gleason and I actually played 4 games of straight pool, to 100, I guess. I beat him twice, and he beat me once for $1. Then we played for $100. And Gleason won, of course. But he'd been hustling me the whole movie. But it was a nice hustle. He was a good player.
What time's the bus leave?
What bus?
Yours?
8 o'clock. That wouldn't give us much time, would it?
Well, you're right. I guess it wouldn't.
Piper was a young girl at the time who had been in Hollywood and had been a starlet, sort of, you know.
Piper Laurie, who was born Rosetta Jacobs, she is 28 years old when she does this piece, and it's a revelation. Academy Award nomination for Best Actress.
I was doing theater, and then while I was doing the plays off-Broadway, Robert Rawson came to see me backstage, and he gave me a script, and he asked me to read it. I procrastinated reading it because most of the time the scripts weren't very good, and I finally sat down to read it, and I think after the 10th page, I knew, even though my part hadn't come into it yet, I knew I wanted to be part of it. It was just so brilliant and simple.
It's all right. I'm not drunk. And lame.
I spent a lot of time doing research that you would never dare to do nowadays, like going downtown in the middle of the night to the Greyhound bus station. Very interesting. And I did a lot of research working on the walk. I tried things like putting pebbles in one shoe and walking through the park, and I put a lift on. I did everything you can imagine. And then I just found that it was just easier and less painful to just do it with my body. Didn't have to change, the props or anything. Rawson felt that I shouldn't be limping in all the scenes, that we should be selective because sometimes it would be distracting to what was going on. I thought she was very sad, and in some ways I really understood her immediately, perhaps because of my own life at that time. Maybe Rawson picked up something in me that I didn't know I was showing.
Rawson saw in the world so many metaphorical cripples. The hustler, Sarah, is a cripple. Eddie Felsen, he's a cripple at one point. The thumbs. We have the black guy in the beginning that opens up Ames' poem, hobbling, is a cripple. The John Derrick character is crippled in All the King's Men. Literal cripples in his world, but all of them metaphorical cripples. As we have here, Sarah and Eddie, metaphorical cripples.
I never really understood this. People over the years have talked about how they were deeply affected by Sarah. I'm still not sure what that was. There was something in her that appealed to them, that they understood or they wanted to touch.
Piper Laurie plays a woman who's been around, numerous lovers, not married, and that's what she wants to do. She wants to take this guy on as a lover too. She's a bruised individual like Eddie. She's self-destructive like Eddie. She's weak as Eddie. She sees the weakness in Eddie, and she knows that in some way she could comfort it, and that would give her some reason for living, and he too. So she's using him, and he's going to use her.
I don't think she could have rescued him. I don't think he could have rescued her. I think they may have had a relationship that went on for a few years, but I think he needed to grow up in ways. And I don't know what kind of damage he had.
In those days, people didn't like to loop, and there were sound things that needed to be looped. Piper I remember her saying to Rawson, I want to loop the whole film. And he says, kid, you gave it your shot and that's it. You're not going to loop the whole thing. So she begged him in a couple of scenes. She got a chance to re-loop them with a totally different timbre to her voice.
Eddie, look, I've got troubles, and I think maybe you've got troubles. Maybe it'd be better if we just leave each other alone.
It was interesting because it gave the character a lot more depth than it had had. The scene on the hill, when I cut it, the traffic was so heavy you couldn't really understand it. So Richard Voracek was one of the first great dialogue mixers. You can actually understand that scene now.
Sarah, you think I'm a loser?
A loser?
Yeah. I met this guy, Gordon, Bert Gordon. He said I was a born loser.
Would he know?
He knows a lot.
I love that scene. I thought it was a beautifully written scene. It was really easy for me to play. I didn't have to remember any lines. And I just had to listen to this person opening up.
Feel a roll of those balls? You don't have to look, you just know. Yeah, make shots that nobody's ever made before. And you play that game the way nobody's ever played it before.
You're not a loser, Eddie. You're a winner. Some men never get to feel that way about anything. I love you, Eddie.
Because she was so moved by what he had said, she had to tell him something of what she was feeling. But he couldn't say that he loved her. And I'm aware that through the years, that scene has been ripped off in lots of different ways, about lots of different things. I hear that, the guy talking about his love, or what it is that he does or wants to do. But that was the first time it was done, and I thought Paul was just beautiful in that. And I spent a lot of time with Robert Rawson, just talking about the part. And one day we had a horrible argument, and we didn't talk for a couple of days. I'd remember it was the scene when I leave the restaurant after Paul tells me he's going away. And I go out into the rain. I don't know, I thought I should keep going, and he wanted me to stay there.
Robert Rawson was just on her like white on rice. And one day, I, big mouth, take her aside, and I said, honey, I know what you're doing, and you're absolutely right. You just stick to your guns. And she says, oh, thank you so much, because I don't know how to deal with them.
We were both so intense about it. It was a very intense experience, the whole thing.
Word's out on you, Eddie. You walk in the wrong kind of place, they'll eat you alive.
When did you adopt me?
I don't know when it was.
First time I'd worked with George Scott, and he was interesting.
This is a guy, too, that's just starting out. He is born in 26, so he's even younger. He's 34 when he does this film. He joined the Marines at 16, then went to college, University of Virginia. He started as a journalist major, and then he got interested in acting. And it was Joe Papp that really gave him the break as Richard III. Evil king, hunchback king in the park. The Hustler is George C. Scott's third film. It's only third film. And his second Academy Award nomination is Best Support. And he's marvelous. Again, Rawson, look, the eyes, beady almost. And they watch, they watch, they watch, they watch.
I thought he was a little strange at the time because he'd cracked his glasses, so there was a line down the middle of his glasses. And he came to work that way every day, and I thought, well, why don't he get him fixed, for Pete's sake? He's working. I know he's got the money. I mean, but he was a nice guy, and I liked George.
Robert Rawson didn't know what to expect. He really wanted him to play the part in The Hustler. And he asked me to go with him to meet George C. Scott for the first time. Everyone was scared of George in those days. And then during the course of the movie, we didn't speak. I'd worked with him once before. We didn't speak then either. I wouldn't call it friction. It was just, I was scared to death of him. I just didn't want to deal with that.
Ready?
As soon as I finish my coffee.
You must have a lot of confidence in me.
I don't, but I got confidence in Finley.
What's that supposed to mean?
Means I got confidence that he's a loser.
all the way a loser. You happen to be about only one half loser. The other half winner. I'm finished.
I think he was aware that it was probably wise that we had no real interaction. I was aware that it was useful to the role. I had this image of him as being some sort of a snake that you don't fool around with. There's a scene in Louisville at the party. He said, pss, 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 pss. And he told me afterwards that he knew that he could never come up with anything that would be as strong for me as what I could imagine. And he was right. Well, we never talked about it. But it didn't matter. I had my own idea of what that might be. He was very smart to just let me invent for myself what would be shocking and degrading. It wasn't until many, many years later that a mutual friend invited me to go to dinner at their house. And he was like a teddy bear. And he greeted me and he picked me up and threw me into the air. Rosie, which is what my very close friends call me. And it was a very different man.
What was interesting, which was different from a Hollywood film, is that all of the actors who were extras, sort of, had bits and were extras, were terrific actors. The policy, I suppose, at the time was just to hire good actors, even though they're just practically extras. So there was that nice feeling that your fellow actors were around, guys you'd worked with and knew.
Those were real characters. They were great characters. There was also the actor Murray Hamilton. That was a wonderful sequence where they did billiards. Again, all part of the story. I have all these visions in my mind of the progression of character there.
I can beat him, Bert. He stuck at me because he knows how to hustle. I didn't think he did, but I can outplay him. I can beat him.
I don't believe you, Eddie. I think you're still a loser.
This was my second big picture, so it was a very important time in my life. It was covered from top to bottom, so that I had tons and tons of footage.
They had this wonderful man who was the billiard champion of the world at that time. His name was Willie Moscone. And Dee Dee was a wonderful editor. She made it look like they were doing every single shot.
A lot of it was them because they were pretty good pool players. But a lot of the close-ups might have been Moscone. I knew nothing about pool. As a matter of fact, the picture was in black and white. So the prop man photographed the pool balls in black and white on what was then a fairly new technique, which was called Polaroid. So I kept, the things up near my cutting room so I could distinguish one ball from the other. Little tricks like that were totally to film, nothing to do with the way we work now.
The way you're looking at it, is that the way you look at a man you've just beaten? As if you've just taken his money and now all you want is his pride?
All I want's the money.
Sure. Sure, just the money. The aristocratic pleasure of seeing him fall apart. You're Roman, Bert. You have to win them all.
When I actually saw the movie, I was horrified. I was just beside myself with disappointment. I think the writing was so good that when I read it, I had a vivid image of what it was. I saw the movie in my head, like the director was seeing it, but it was my head, and I saw things differently, and I saw my own performance differently.
Is that a drink?
Well, when you're a new actor starting out, you don't see a film. You see your part.
It took me maybe 5-10 years. I began to see, oh, wow, this is really good. And I've seen it recently, maybe a year ago, and it still holds up.
I have to say, Robert Rossen did do a good job because I appreciate it even more, maybe because I was older than I was the young guy at the time we made it. I appreciated what a hell of a film that is.
something is character-driven, as most pictures I've been fortunate enough to work on are, instead of just story or action, the characters become part of the life.
I mean, how can I lose? Because you were right, Bert. I mean, it's not enough that you just have talent. You got to have character, too.
When the film came out, we were not aware of what a sort of a classic it was. I've talked to cameramen that can recite every line of The Hustler. I mean, they know it backwards and forwards.
When I'm drunk, I lie.
Okay, so what's your name today?
Sarah.
I got nominated for an Academy Award, and it was a very pleasurable experience for me.
9 Academy Award nominations, 2 wins. For art direction, set decoration, black and white, and for cinematography, black and white. And it made money.
I knew it was going to be a movie that everybody connected with, but I didn't know how successful it was going to be financially.
It's a beacon in this very, very dark time at 20th Century Fox.
It was a good period, a good time, and it was one of the great experiences in my life.
Fat man, shoot a great game of pool. So do you, Fast Eddie.